again. Okay, in this video I'm going to show you how to work a purl stitch, but I wanted to show you first that this is your basic stockinette fabric where you're knitting the knits and you're purling the purls on the opposite side. So on the knit side you see these beautiful V's. You have these, this is one stitch, this is one stitch, this is one stitch. Every V is a stitch down the row. I've done about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 rows. You can't hardly see that one that's up underneath there because it's kind of rolling. But there's about 7 rows of stitches here. And I'm ready to purl. So I've got my tail end of my yarn down here on the right edge of the fabric and my working yarn over here on the left because I've already worked across this row and in the knit stitch. Now I'm going to flip the work, put the tail end of the yarn over on the left side and the working yarn over on the right. Grab myself some spare yarn. As you can see, it's going to change colors here and again. But this is the purl side of the row. So the difference between the V's on the knit side and the purls is on the purl side you have these bumps. All these bumps, each individual bump is a stitch. And that's how you know that you're on the purl side of the work. Or when you're trying to figure out where you are in a pattern, if you're doing knits and purls together, you can see the difference between the knit because the knit has a V and the purl has a bump, or sometimes called a necklace. When you're working a purl stitch, you want to work so that your needles are kind of facing each other in this direction because you're going to go into the front. Instead of going into the knit stitch this way, under on the left side of the stitch underneath to the back, you're going to come with the yarn in front, the working yarn in front, because normally when you're doing knitting you're going with the yarn in the back side. When you're purling you want the yarn in front. You're going to go into the front of the stitch above the purl bump to the front of the yarn or front of the work, I'm sorry, in front of the fabric needle with the working needle. You're going to go into the front, pick up the yarn, and wrap around from right to left. Go under the fabric needle, the left needle, and pull the stitch off. So you go with the yarn in front, you go under the front side of that stitch, wrap around, and pull to the back side and off. In to the front of the, above the purl bump, to the front of the stitch with the right needle in the front of the left needle, wrap around and pull off of the left needle. In, wrap around from right to left, to the back and off the needle. Into the front, wrap around right to left, push through to the back and pull it off the needle. In, wrap around to the back and pull off. Into the front, wrap around right to left, to the back and pull off the needle. In, wrap, off, and off you go. Ready? Wrap around to the back and off. In, wrap around to the back and off. In, wrap around to the back and off the needle. In, wrap around to the back and off the needle. In, right to left, to the back and off the needle. In, wrap around right to left, to the back and off the needle. In, wrap around to the back and off. In, wrap around right to left, to the back and off the needle. With the last stitch, same thing in. It's not like with a knit stitch you go in from the left to the right. With the purl stitch, you go from the right to the left in the front. Wrap around and off the needle. There will be this slack bit, but when you knit, it will cinch up, as you can see it has with every other stitch that I've done for every row. So then you turn your work, and again the working yarn or the work goes into the left hand. Kind of pull this down, and purl stitches do have a tendency to be tighter than knit stitches because the yarn stays closer, so there's less gap between these purl stitches than there is in the knit stitch, because the yarn has to move further with the knit stitch. But so the purl stitches might be a little tight against the needle. So try, and people have the hardest time keeping their tension when they're purling, more so than when they're knitting. So when you come back to the knit stitch, you again pull this kind of taut, but it's going to be a little loose. And then if you knit it, it'll close up that tension. And you can usually tell by the second stitch that the tension is closed up. See? You can see it's no longer loose. Also in the stockinette fabric, you can see the bottom edge kind of curling up, and that is natural for the yarn to move in that direction to curl up. It will naturally just kind of roll. So that's not something that's going wrong. It's actually perfectly fine. When you block it out, it will fix that curling issue. But it's normal and natural for it to kind of want to roll up on itself. And different fabrics, or different, this is 100% cotton, but different wools and acrylics roll more so than the cotton yarn does, at least I've found. But anyway, that is how you purl and switch back to knitting in a stockinette fabric.